Hey everyone! Today I'm going to be doing my best to break down what I consider the most important mechanics in the upcoming Soul Harvest trial. Full disclosure, this is going to be one of the most mechanically intense trials we've had in a while, with a lot of moving parts. So please don't let the video length scare you, as there is a lot to unpack. For those of you seeking a simple TLDR, feel free to skip to the chapter of this video called Trial Recap, where I give you a rapid fire rundown of everything you need to do to survive, and hopefully not rage quit. This guide provides a high-level overview of the trial and its key mechanics. Due to the scope, I won't be covering what I consider the basics on survival, such as avoiding red areas or clearly telegraphed attacks. For more detailed information, including boss attacks, I have a written guide available in the description and pinned comments of this video. The group is randomly split into two parties of 5 players. The game prioritizes each side having at least one tank and one healer, for those of you not running the usual 2 tank, 2 healer and 6 DPS composition. The two parties are then sent to the 2 of the 3 biomes, Fae, Fire, or Ice, which is also at random. Starting to notice a theme? Don't stress too much about the perfect synergy here. By the halfway mark of the trial, both parties will regroup. So phase 1 is basically a slightly chaotic warm-up. It's better to survive this first half with a slightly unoptimized setup than to double up on everything for the second half, which is the real make or break moment. TLDR, nothing changes from your regular 10-man trial setup, and whatever you used for Shackles of Divinity will work just fine here. As the phase begins, you might notice a rather large, ominous presence overhead. The Regent of Thay himself, Szass Tam. Randomly splitting your well-coordinated group was merely an appetizer. For on Master difficulty, he will now begin the process of enacting his edicts in each biome, as well as casting powers to thwart your attempts at preventing his ascension. I will go over all his edicts and powers at the end of this guide, as they are numerous, cast at random, and differ between advanced and standard modes. Basically, it's chaos with a side of chaos. The goal here is to bring the health of the boss in each biome down to 50%. This is the point where they become locked out, invulnerable, and the stun mechanic for each biome begins. There is no time limit here, and you do not need to phase them at the exact same time, unlike the claws in Tiamat. Once the boss in each biome has been brought down to 50% health, they will begin siphoning off their essence to Szass Tam. If this is allowed to happen, Szass Tam will ascend to godhood, dooming you and your group. This has now become a wipe mechanic, meaning your team needs to coordinate together in order to succeed, so listen carefully. This phase plays out in 2 parts simultaneously, one for DPS and one for supports, tank and healer. The first thing you need to know is that you are now on the clock. You will notice a timer ticking down on the right side of your screen. This is the stun mechanic timer. It is not in seconds, just a value that is counting down. To get the actual amount of time you have left in seconds, simply divide the number by 2. Once the timer reaches 0, it is a full and unrecoverable raid wipe. Your goal as a DPS this phase is to buy the supports enough time to traverse the maze and perform the necessary swap, depositing the soul they collected from their biome into the biome the other team is at, hence the swap. Souls? Swap? Bear with me. I got you. Once this phase begins, the first thing you want to do is ensure your supports, healer and tank, are able to do their part. For that to happen, you need to help kill the 2 specific ghosts in your biome. Soul of the Devout, green, and Soul of the Sentinel, blue. The healer and tank ghosts have set spawn locations. If you memorize them, you can go to the location as soon as the boss locks out and be ready for them as they spawn, saving you precious time. You only need to kill them once, even if they respawn later. Once your healer and tank have their buffs, the healer will glow green and have an eye above their head, the tank will glow blue and have a large bubble around them. You can now go get your own special buff. Red ghosts should have spawned in the biome that you are in, a Soul of the Vanguard. Killing this ghost will give you a special buff as a DPS, regardless of the biome. Aside from allowing you to engage with the different stun mechanics I cover in the next section, the buff from the red ghost also reduces your incoming damage while providing you with a heal over time. So make sure you, as a DPS, are always under the effect of the red buff in order to make your survival without a healer and tank way more manageable. This is a crucial mechanic the entire trial has been balanced around, so do not underestimate or overlook it. This is by far the trickiest of the 3 stun mechanics that almost certainly will cause the majority of the initial wipes, until people understand the mechanic, or, pay close attention to this guide. At the same time, it is also the easiest due to how much time it adds to your timer when performed correctly. But it comes with one major caveat, and is the reason most struggle. It takes a long time to perform and has a 2-phase process. Phase 1. You need to find and kill a red ghost, Soul of the Vanguard. You will know the buff is active as your character will glow red and have a star-like icon above its head. With this buff active, stand in a purple pool in the biome. As you continue to stay in the pool, you will notice a plant begin to form. You are essentially growing this plant by feeding it the soul you acquired from the red ghost. At some point, your buff will expire, which is why it is important to make sure it is always active. If it isn't, go kill another red ghost and keep standing in the pool. Phase 2. After about 30 seconds of standing in the pool, a cute little creature will spawn and walk towards the boss. This is what will increase your timer once it makes contact and sacrifices itself. Now, refresh your buff by killing another red ghost and repeat the process from phase 1 until your supports return and the boss bar is no longer grayed out. Each DPS should have their own pool. The mechanic is not sped up based on the amount of people in the same pool. All 3 pools going at the same time means 3 times the timer increase. Overall, it takes about roughly 40 seconds before you even see your timer go up, which is why it is so crucial to begin performing the mechanic as soon as possible. As such, only one DPS should help the supports with their green and blue ghosts in this biome, so that they can leave through the maze, while the other 2 DPS immediately perform the mechanic the moment the red ghosts spawn. Failure to act quickly will result in a wipe since you do not have much time to begin with. This is probably one of the most simplest of the stun mechanics. Every mob killed will split its soul currency with you and any nearby DPS. So all you do is farm up as many mobs as you can while having the red ghost buff up, and when you see the timer get low, you run to the burning tree in the center of the biome and the currency you've gained will automatically be converted into extra time once you stand on the circular rune under the tree. Due to the fact that the currency is shared with nearby DPS, it may be beneficial to group together for survivability while pulling all mobs in as needed. Remember to have everyone go deposit their acquired souls every so often, since it is a per person thing. This one can get tricky. Your goal is to find the activated stone pillars which have a beacon above them and stand in the yellow barrier they generate to increase the timer while also preventing you from being frozen. The more people in the barrier, the more the timer increases by. The activated pillars keep changing, so you will have to switch pillars and keep repeating the process while defending against mobs and trying to keep your red ghost buff up. In this biome, you'll continuously gain stacks of frostbite over time. To counter this, being close to another player will grant you warmth and thus immunity from frostbite. Gain too many stacks of frostbite and you'll be frozen in place for quite some time. So I suggest moving together as a group from pillar to pillar to increase the timer. The first thing you need to do is don't panic. Okay? Good. Take a deep breath. Breathe. Alright. I know the majority of you following along are supports. You can't fool me. But guess what? As a force support main, I've got your back and we'll do this together, so listen carefully. 2 very important ghosts will spawn in the biome that you are currently in. A soul of the devout, green, and a soul of the sentinel, blue. Killing these ghosts will give the healer and tank special buffs. It does not matter who kills these ghosts. So long as the healer and tank are in the biome, they will get the buff. So it is recommended that at least one DPS assists the supports in getting their respective powers from the ghosts. Soul of the Devout. This is by far the most crucial buff. It allows the healer to transport the soul of the scorched, decayed, or frozen biome to the biome the other party is at. If both healers perform this swap, the stun mechanic, and thus the wipe mechanic, will end, allowing the fight to continue on to the next phase. This is why it is crucial that the swap happens as soon as possible. You will know you have gotten this buff when your character glows green and there is a small eye icon above your head. Soul of the Sentinel. This buff grants the tank a bubble that bestows a blessing to them and any allies within it that nullifies the damage over time effect of the death biome, as well as increased visibility in the fog. The buff granted from being in the bubble persists for a few seconds after leaving it, so you don't need to always be within it. You will know you have gotten this buff when your character glows blue and a large bubble forms around your character. As a healer, you will carefully transport this soul through the death biome, ultimately bringing it to the boss of the biome the other party is at. Your buff also makes the various traps in the maze stand out with a green highlight, so you should use that to your advantage as you navigate through, finding a safe path for both you and your tank to follow. Avoid mobs where possible, and if you see the wandering Tenebralith, you should most likely backtrack, allowing it room to pass. Just saying. As a tank, you need to try your best to keep up with your healer, following in their footsteps so as to avoid any traps. Your bubble allows them to see, as well as to avoid the damage over time effect of the death biome you are in. If you are struggling to find your way out of the maze to the biome you need to go to, I suggest placing down a map marker at the biome the other party is at. That way, you can follow the sparkling path. Though, be warned, the sparkling path does not care for traps and could lead you to certain death. On the topic of traps and certain death, there could be multiple paths that branch out in the maze. Some to dead ends, some through unavoidable traps, but the correct path will always be the one where you can avoid traps by carefully moving around them. If you need to jump over traps or walk through them, aka brute forcing like you've seen me do here, then it is not the right way. But it might end up being quicker, so you need to decide if the risks are worthwhile. Keep in mind that the paths through the maze have multiple variations and are also randomized. Once you have traversed through the maze, scrapes, cuts, bruises and all, I suggest that you wait at the exit of the maze before proceeding further. Why, you might ask? The moment the healer deposits the soul, the boss for that biome will become active, while still being invulnerable to all damage. So anyone around would take unnecessary damage. Instead, I recommend both sides doing the swap should communicate when they are ready to deposit their buff. Once the ready signal is given by both support teams, the tanks immediately hard taunt their respective boss while the healers enter the green circle under the boss to deposit the soul they were transporting, thus completing the swap, ending the wipe mechanic, and allowing the fight to continue. The moment the souls are deposited, a portal will appear in both biomes the two parties are in. These portals can be used to swap people around strategically if you want or need to, otherwise they can be ignored. Be quick though, as the portals do not stay up long. Now that the bosses have become vulnerable again, it is time to finish them. Once both bosses have been defeated by both teams, a new portal will appear in the biome they are in that will take them to the final boss. Head through the portal where the next phase will begin. I suggest tanks and healers go in first, followed by DPS. In a shocking turn of events, you're now all together, ready to take on the final boss as a true trial group. Things are about to get interesting. How you choose to approach this fight is up to you and your team, but I would recommend one tank engages with the boss, while the other tank grabs the attention of the mobs so they do not swarm the DPS and healers. Bring this boss down to 50% health, and they'll end up locking out like the previous bosses. Seems easy enough. What could go wrong? Surprise! Those two bosses you defeated previously, they're back for revenge as phantasmal variants of themselves, complete with the majority of their movesets. And to make matters worse, Remember the stun mechanic we went over previously? It is now in effect. So depending on the biome you are in, the DPS will need to engage with the stun mechanic to keep the timer going. Notice a hint of chaos forming? Not only do you need to keep the timer going, but you also need to take care of not one, but 2 bosses in order to move on to the next phase. The timer stops counting down when both phantasmal bosses are defeated. I would suggest deciding ahead of time which phantom you'll be taking out first as a group. That way, one tank pulls the first phantom to a suitable location to burst down, while the other tank rounds up any mobs and grabs the other phantom away from the main group, so its attacks do not land on the group. My personal recommendation in order of most to least annoying is Fey, Ice, and then Fire. While artifacts are on cooldown, the DPS should focus on keeping the timer up, and then when they are off cooldown, one more artifact call can be made to then take out the final phantom before continuing to the next phase. Just a heads up, unless they change this before or after release, if your final boss ends up being at the ice biome, then the 2 phantoms come with a shiny new please panic mechanic. They will both target the active pillar DPS are performing the stun mechanic at by sending attacks to the pillar itself. DPS need to be aware of this and be ready to dodge, get away from the pillar, else they will die. One strategy could be artifacting and taking out one phantom immediately at the start while everyone avoids doing the stun mechanic, and afterwards play a game of cat and mouse for a minute where DPS do the stun mechanic to buy time before the next artifact call, before finally taking out the last phantom. So tanks, don't freak out if the phantoms suddenly forget you exist and stop caring about threat. They're not broken, they're just very focused on punishing those pillars. You cannot hold their threat while DPS are performing the stun mechanic of the ice biome. Time to wrap things up. The fight continues and your goal here is to defeat this boss once and for all. Before you face the boss, split your group into a party of 2, with 1 tank, 1 heal, and 3 DPS per party, ideally. Planning this in advance will come in handy for the next phase, because you'll once again be on the clock. Or you could just go with the parties the game assigns you if that makes things easier. Your choice. Once the final boss is defeated, you will automatically be teleported to the ice biome, unless you happen to be ending on the ice biome. The ice biome is always the ending biome, and this is by design because it is the furthest from the exit phase you'll be performing soon. This phase begins with Valkyrio. Yes, that Valkyrio, calling for the souls of the damned. Remember how she said that she would watch over us until her debt was paid? I love seeing that type of continuity, but I digress. Your entire queue group is present, and this is where splitting into groups of 2 with a tank, healer, and 3 DPS comes into play. You will notice among the various enemies that spawn 2 familiar ghosts, Soul of the Devout, green, and Soul of the Sentinel, blue. Remember the swap from earlier? We're doing something similar here. The goal here is to take the now empowered souls that drop from the green ghosts and deposit them at the Fey and Fire biomes respectively. But there's a catch. The DPS will now have to come with, which means you all need to navigate the maze together, avoiding deadly traps and mobs, all while on the clock. So split into your chosen parties of 2 and then go your separate ways to deposit your empowered souls into each biome simultaneously. While I've up until now tried to steer clear from giving exact values as anything could change leading up to the initial release and in later patches, I do feel that not pointing out the following could ruin your entire run. As things stand currently, you will have exactly 5 minutes to get through the Death Biome maze, deposit the empowered soul, and then once again traverse the Death Biome maze to meet up with the other party at the gate. You will know how close you are to an imminent wipe by the bell tolls that sound off every 25 seconds. On the 12th toll, you will wipe. For those of you who play with the game sound off, now might be a good time to turn it on once more, huh? The wipe timer begins the moment you get teleported to the ice biome, or the ice biome boss is dead, if you happen to be ending in the ice biome. I suggest using the same tactic as the earlier swap, having both parties wait at the exit of the maze before entering the biome, until both parties are ready to deposit their souls. This way, you avoid the wave of mobs. Both healers need to deposit the soul into a green circle where the boss of that biome once stood. The biome also has a green and blue ghost. You can kill these to extend the buff timers for the healer, ability to see traps, and tank, visibility and protection from the death biome damage over time effect. If you have successfully deposited both buffs into both the Fey and Fire biomes, Valkyria will let you know that it is now time to head to the gate. This is it, the final push. You now need to carefully head towards the bridge which, if you squint at your map, is that lone rectangle awkwardly jutting out between the Fire and Fey biomes. You thought you were done with the Death biome. Try not to trip. Once you arrive at the now open gate Valkyria mentioned, make sure you wait for the other party, as this is an escape sequence that is done much easier with the combined help of both tanks and healers. Once both parties have arrived, the tank should lead the way, grabbing the threat of all the mobs on the bridge, while the healers try to keep everyone alive, DPS CCing and killing mobs as they go. Try your best not to die here, I'll explain why in just a bit. Consider only moving forward after each meteor shower that Szass Tam does to avoid anyone dying unnecessarily. This brings me to the most crucial point yet. Permadeath is not an option. You will need at least 9 players alive at the end of the bridge sequence in order to escape and beat the trial. Any less than 9 and it is a wipe. Let that sink in.
What did he say?
This is an intended difficulty mechanic that relies on you just needing to stay alive, as opposed to your traditional DPS heal check wipe mechanic. That number is reduced to 6 players on Advanced and 3 players on Standard. If you have managed to get to the end of the bridge with enough people standing on the circular platform, and you have not run out of time, then congratulations! You have just beat Soul Harvest. You will now be teleported to a familiar location. Go ahead, celebrate, and once you're done, check the table in front of you for your typical floor loot, and then head on upstairs to claim the rest of your rewards via the 2 chests, which can now be rerolled once more. The use of Szass Tam's edicts and powers depends on the version of the trial you are running. On the master version, his edicts and powers are able to be used the moment the trial starts. On Advanced, he only begins using them once you get the initial boss down to 50% health and begin the stun mechanic. On Standard, he does not use his edicts at all, but may still cast his powers. Szass Tam has the ability to apply 5 edicts at random. You can tell he is in the process of casting an edict when his hands appear to be forming a golden ring. He will pick a random biome and cast one of the following edicts. Chaos.
Entropy.
A random player category is disabled for a time. This includes your daily, encounters, and at-wills. Tanks will never have their encounters locked out. Decay.
Decay.
Player stamina regeneration is reduced. Tanks need to be mindful of this one. Oppression.
Suffocate.
Player ability cooldown times increased. Regression.
Regress.
Player artifact, mount, and utility slot disabled, devastating on artifact calls. Wrath.
Suffer.
At-will powers damage the player. The edicts last 30 seconds, with chaos lasting only 15 seconds specifically for encounter lockouts, which tanks are immune to, due to their hard taunt encounters being a crucial component in a fight. Keeping in mind when last he applied an edict could prove helpful in landing a massive artifact call. Remember that you are playing by Szass Tam's rules. He is in control, so trying to find a way forward throughout all the chaos is part of the challenge. Szass Tam is also able to inflict additional chaos with a handful of exciting powers. Pay close attention to his animations and voice lines to know which he is casting. Dark Star.
Darkness consumes. Fear the dark. Behold, darkness.
You can tell he is casting this as his hands rise up. This spawns large purple bubbles that inflict the Death biome status effect when within them that reduces visibility and has a DOT effect. You basically just want to avoid these at all costs. They always spawn in the same location per biome, so positioning around them is easy. Disrupt life.
Your life force drains. Your life is mine to take. Siphon. Siphon. Siphon!
Making dual fists is the tell here. This reduces maximum player health considerably. This is a dangerous one. Keep this in mind when engaging with any boss, mechanic or mob, as you will almost certainly die to attacks you normally would live through. The same goes for tanks, so be extra cautious with tank busters. You will know this power is active if you have a red fiery border around your screen. Frightening gaze.
Fear me. What is death but fear realized? I see you.
His eyes will go red and have a twinkle. This reduces player movement speed significantly. Nothing much to say here. It could be annoying under certain circumstances since who doesn't like to go fast? Meteor.
The sky falls. Death rains from above.
Flames will shoot up from his hands, large AoE circles that cause a devastating amount of damage. You can iframe these, but where possible, it is better to just avoid them altogether. Like the Darkstar power, these two have set spawn points, so your tank should position bosses in such a way that the rest of the group does not get hit by them. While this guide was primarily made with master and advanced versions of the trial in mind, you might still find some bits useful. The standard RTQ version of the trial is heavily simplified. Instead of the group being split into 2 parties of 5, you are instead all grouped together for an epic boss rush at all times. There is no death by a maze sequence, which means no stun or swap mechanics. You take down one boss, a portal then appears in the biome that you use to be taken to the next boss, and this process repeats until you defeat the final boss, after which you teleport onto the bridge, where you rush through to the end and escape together. The following is a high-level overview of all the phases and what you need to know in order to clear the Soul Harvest trial. If anything feels unclear, just jump to that phases chapter in this video where I break it down in more detail. Phase 1. The group splits into 2 teams of 5 and gets sent to 2 random biomes. Bring each biome boss down to 50% health. Phase 2. DPS. Kill the green and blue ghosts so your supports get their buffs. Kill red ghosts to engage with your biome stun mechanic. Keep an eye on the timer on the right. If it hits 0, it's a wipe. Supports. Get the green and blue ghost buffs. Navigate the death biome's maze to the other party's biome. Both healers must deposit their souls to end the phase. Phase 3. After the swap, finish off both biome bosses. A portal opens, and both teams head to the biome of the final boss. Phase 4. Bring the boss down to 50% health. Phase 5. Phantoms of the previously defeated biome bosses spawn. DPS must now perform this biome's stun mechanic while taking out the phantoms. Once the phantoms are defeated, the stun mechanic ends and the next phase begins. Phase 6. Defeat the final boss. Phase 7. Split into 2 parties and get green and blue ghost buffs. Navigate the death biome maze. One party goes to Fey, the other to Fire. Both healers must deposit their souls at their biome. Head to the bridge gate to regroup with the other party. Reach the circle at the end of the bridge to complete the trial. If you have found this video helpful in the slightest, please do let me know in the comments down below so I get an idea of if these types of videos are truly helpful and if I should keep making more like them in the future. I really dislike making long form videos, but I do this out of the love for all of you to hopefully make your trial experience slightly easier and less chaotic, so your feedback will make all of this worthwhile to me. I plan to run Soul Harvest the moment it drops on Tuesday, the 25th of November, so if you'd like to stop by to catch a live experience and ask any questions, you're more than welcome to join over at twitch.tv/Deadmano, where I'd be happy to have you. I'd like to take a moment to thank the following people: Ironius and Kiri from the Neverwinter team, the Ashes of Anka Guild, especially Berke, Woozy, Shadow Minstrel, and Escanor, the knowledgeable Zaranir, the fashionable Nikki, and of course my lovely partner Melly, who has played a monumental role in the creation and editing of this guide. Dused Daram, Azizam. For now, go out there and show Szass Tam what you're all made of, and most importantly, have fun. Until next time, much love, and bye for now.